You know, my sense is that what we're doing today is we're building this big fire and we're piling logs on it. I had never heard of moral injury before yesterday afternoon. And I'd forgotten polarity thinking that I came across 20 years ago until yesterday afternoon. And then I realized how much they're really both in the center of my work. And that work is really around how do we create the spaces that allow us to work well with those polarities? How do we create the spaces that allow us to deal well with moral injury? One of the comments that Vic made in the very beginning, she talked about how, at one level, healing from the physical wounds is easy. It's what the hell do we do with the social and emotional wounds? How do we work with those? My own work for the last 3 years has primarily been in Japan, and it's been in the disaster areas. To do a quick flashback, if we go back to March of 2011, a tsunami came in, moving at 50 miles an hour, 60 feet high, 45 minutes after an earthquake. Within moments, 500,000 people were without jobs, without homes, or without both. A little ways further to the south from the earthquake epicenter was Fukushima. And the next day, the radiation started coming out. And we talk about that as the triple disasters. I've got a long relationship with Japan. It started in 1970. It's the culture of my heart. It's the culture that helped me learn who Bob is. In 2010, I was invited to do some work bringing in participatory leadership and work around dialogue. And so when the triple disasters hit, I knew immediately that I had to go, because the question that came to me immediately was, how do we support people in the disaster region in creating the communities that they want, rather than government with the best of intentions coming in and rebuilding the future? I got there in early April. And there's this one really sort of powerful beginning point for me. We decided at the end of 2010, we were starting to work both with dialogue and working with a new form that we called future centers. And we had decided at 2010 that we were going to do a kickoff in April of 2011 around this new future center movement. We almost decided not to do it because things were so, it's like moving through molasses. The thickness in the air was incredible. But then we decided, yeah, this is really important. We're going to go ahead. 50 or so people come into the room. And they're people who have known each other, but there's so much heaviness in the air. Remember, this is a disaster going on within a collective culture where everything covers the culture. And there's this, shit, I don't know that I want to be here. I don't know that I'm ready to talk with anyone about this. I haven't talked with anyone about it. I'm probably going to have to. Am I ready? So there's this just kind of, 3 hours later, and one of the words I love in Japanese is waku waku. And waku waku means excitement. The room was filled with excitement. And it was so overwhelming that I had to take this step back and just try and sense into, what the hell is going on here? And what happened in this 3 hours? And when I did that sensing in, what came to me was this pretty loud voice saying, we have been released from a future we did not want. The question is, what happened in that space of 3 hours that allowed that transition from stuckness to this sense of excitement? What allowed a stepping into the immense moral injury that was done by that earthquake and that tsunami and that radiation relief? What happened? So, let's back up one. Now, there's going to be a test on this diagram. Just, so the work that I've been doing over the last 3 years has been one of trying to understand how do we create the spaces. What are the stages? What are the processes? What are the things that we need to attend to if we're going to actually be able to invite people to use that energy of collapse, to use those social and emotional wounds, use that moral injury to create what they want? And of course, part of the discovery is that it's, at the one level, it's really simple, and at another level, it's fairly complicated. Or at least there's different stages that we need to be able to pay attention to. And so we've started looking at the notion that there's like 5 different kinds of spaces that are important, and they often overlap. But it's intentionally creating the spaces that can host the grief and can host the possibilities. It's creating the spaces where people come together to create the local action that they will take, not that somebody else will take, but that they will take in their communities. It's creating the spaces that allow people from different communities to come together and share learning and share practice with each other and begin to understand how do we go from local change to creating systems of transformation. It's recognizing that even when we're doing that, unless we begin to create a new story for the future, unless we begin to collectively envision what it is that we want, all we'll have is isolated pieces. And it's creating the spaces where we as practitioners come, the well that we come back to deepen our own learning and deepen our own confidence that we can move ahead. So there's at least all of those kind of spaces. One of the things that's also become clear is that if we just concentrate on the space, it's totally inadequate. So we've looked at, what are some of the things that we're learning about these stages of transformation. Part of what we're seeing is that it always begins, it's interesting. In a lot of my work over the last number of years, I've been in this story that it begins with purpose. We must have clarity of purpose. And that's true. But actually, when we're doing this work, the place that we have to start is we have to start with imagination. We have to start with coming together and imagine what else might be possible. And that when we imagine what else is possible, that then we say, who else? Who else is it that we can invite to this? We actually don't have to have everybody in the room. One of the great deceptions that we've operated with for a long time is that we need consensus and we need everybody. No, we just need the people that we can invite. And we invite them together and we engage in really dynamic ways. And when we do that engagement, we start saying we've got to harvest it. We've got to make present to the whole system what's going on throughout the system. But then we've also got to recognize that harvesting itself is only a piece, that we've got to make that visible. So what happens next? Because it's our capacity to go beyond what happens in this room, that by making that visible to others, that we begin to connect more of the system and we discover who else it is that we should invite in for that next round of imagining, that next part of the spiral. We also know that when we're doing this work, there's different stages to pay attention to in that ba, in that social space. And so we talk about building trust, we talk about creating relationship, we talk about sharing ideas, we talk about gathering information, and then we talk about taking it to action. So this is kind of like the systems map that we've been envisioning out of some of the work in Japan. Within that, at one level, what we're really doing is we're helping people learn resilience again, because we're trying to create thriving, resilient communities. And there's interesting research that says the heart of community resilience is learning how to work with social and emotional capital, okay? But in order to work with social and emotional capital, we have to have the wind horse behind our own. What does that mean? What's that look like? What happens in these spaces, the most important thing that happens in these spaces, is that people remember to be themselves. Most of the time, most of the structures and processes that we're engaged in tell us to forget who the hell we are. We have to remember who we are. Second thing is that we have to do what matters. You know, there's been this wonderful phenomena in Japan. It's called the U-turns and the I-turns. So the U-turns are people who grew up in the disaster area, went to Tokyo for education, jobs, whatever else, thought that was where they're going to hang out because there was social pressure to, if you're any good, you live in Tokyo. But their grandmother called them back. Their spirit called them back, and they made a U-turn to the region. Then there were the others, there were the I-turns. Those were the ones that never had any connection with the region, but who felt called to go there. I've had lots of conversations with them. You know what they say? They say, when I was hanging out in Tokyo, I didn't have any idea who the hell I was or why I was here. And you know, actually, it's true that when I went there, I thought I was going to go there and I was going to fix them. But I actually started hanging out with people who knew how to be themselves and who knew what it was important. And the disasters were a teaching in terms of what was important. The next thing that happens in these spaces is that people start standing up and they keep standing together. This has been like the most fascinating phenomena. There's the Kotozawa, the proverb, the nail that sticks up gets pounded down. Many of you have probably heard that, right? So what's happening now in Japan is that in many ways, from the push of the disasters, people are saying, I got to stand up. I have to do something. I can't wait for government. I can't wait for my neighbor. This is too important. And I just saw the sign back there, so I can't tell the story about Hakozaki-san, who's this amazing man who comes from, I'm going to tell the story anyway, it comes from Itatemura. Itatemura was developing a reputation as a village in Japan with the cleanest air, the most fertile soil, and delicious water. Village of 6,000 people that no one lives in anymore. Hakozaki-san goes from there. He goes to Minami-Soma, which is about 20 miles away, 15 miles from the reactors. And he says, somebody has got to take care of decontamination. We can't wait for government. That's just too fucking slow. And I don't know anything about it, but that's what I'm going to stand for. And I'm going to find the other people who I can work with to begin decontamination here, because we have to do it together. So it's the standing up while standing together that's been the important energy that's manifesting in Japan right now, which, as far as I can tell, is exactly what we need in the rest of the world. You know, others have talked about this. When we do this, when we start finding that next step, you know, it's all we need is the next step. We need a sense of direction, and we need to know what the hell we're going to do next. And then we need to do that with this commitment to step back, reflect on it, learn from it, and do it again. And when we do that, you know, like one of the most important things is that we have to embrace ambiguity. Ambiguity is our biggest friend. And this work is not about cleaning up the messes that are out there. We're going to be living in messes for the rest of our lives. And if we waste our time trying to clean up the mess, we're just going to go crazy. So the question is, how do we live with it? How do we work with it? It helps to have a map, at least a sense of where the hell we're trying to go. And it's critical that we enjoy it. I think because of the fingers going up at the back of the room, I'm going to stop. And I know that we're in a really important time right now. You know, we're in the time when so many of us in this room and so many in other rooms know that we need some radical changes. You know, there is this dance of continuity and transformation. part of that dance is figuring out how we move ahead. And right now, a lot of my work is in this framework of disaster and system collapse as a springboard for creating thriving resilience. Part of that's because, as I look out at the future, one of the only things that I'm willing to predict is that we're going to have more disasters and more collapsing systems. So figuring out how to use that energy seems really important. It's also true that we don't have to wait for the visible disaster. One of the most amazing comments that just blew my mind a month ago, I was working with a group of younger activists in Fukushima who were talking about their engagement for the long haul. It's like they know this is this is the rest of their lives. And I was with Chiki, this amazing young woman who co-founded co-founded an organization called P-Chart. And P-Chart is for the young women in Fukushima, because it's really hard to be a young woman in Fukushima right now. Do I want to have children? Should I have children? Will anyone marry me? Do I want to be married? Like, these questions are just there, The air is thick with them. And Chiki had come over to the United States. She'd gone to New Orleans and gone to New York as part of a learning tour. And as we were parting, she said to me, what was most amazing for me, this is Chiki from Fukushima, what is most amazing to me was that it's fast food and the way you eat in the United States. The problems that we have in Fukushima are nothing compared to what you need to deal with. So let's learn how to deal with the disasters that we're already living within. Thanks.